Streams, bring the tube.
Sync up the tube.
Bring us the tube. We want the tube. Here comes the tube. Now his is the tube.
All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. What is up, everybody? Welcome to Comic Book Club. I'm Alex.
I'm Justin.
I'm Pete.
And I was about to say, that's your man of the booth, Boothman Prime. But it's not. It's still not. So sad.
So
Someday
sad.
soon. Someday soon we'll all be back there. Now, folks, thanks so much for tuning in. We have two amazing guests for you tonight on the show, but a couple of orders of business first. First of all, if you're on Crowdcast, drop a question and ask a question. I'll try to monitor them. If you have any for our guests, you can certainly send them in the comments. That's fine. But we'll answer all of your questions later on the show. On YouTube, just drop something in the comment section there, and I'll keep one eye on it, and we will get to those as well. Also on YouTube, give us one of those thumbs up. We like it. We like you, and you like us.
Now, we got some stuff to get out right out of the gate. Like, obviously, I'm outside, but and the sun is less beating down on me. I'm drinking a lovely cocktail. I'm truly living my best life. Pete, the same, haircut looking just as good, grown in a bit, looking solid, aligning his top hairs and his lower hairs in the best way. Alex is the new one tonight. He's, first off, in, I want to say a sauna, but you just moved. You spent the last 5 days living truly an American nightmare.
I did. I can highly recommend moving during a pandemic. It makes everything so much easier and so much simpler. Honestly, the movers were great, but just the extra added level of stress of like, I don't know these people. Am I wearing my mask? Are we keeping enough distance? Are we in the house at the same time too much? Then having to deep clean 2 different places. It was a lot. There's a lot. So I'm barely holding it together, but I'm very excited to do the show.
The double deep clean. So everybody, the drinking game for tonight is spotting when Alex loses it. Every time Alex loses it, that's when you drink.
That's when you got to.
When he does take a drink. Take a drink.
It's going to be fun all night long.
Yeah. Probably not for Pete, though. That was another order of business we need to talk about. Depending on how long the show goes, Pete just has to book it on out of here at 8:10, right, Pete?
Yeah, that's right. It's Liwana's father's 70th surprise birthday party via Zoom. So I have to be there. I'm sure there's going to be some old person helping them use technology in this, and it's going to be great.
I got a surprise for him. Bring him into our stream. Let's pull him up. Let's talk to him here. That's when we want to really give him a nice surprise.
Yeah. Now, part of the reason I wanted to set this up top is because otherwise Pete would just click leave and just leave the chat at 8:10 with no warning whatsoever. So now you're all up to speed. There's one other item of business we have to do before we get into the show proper. Now, there are a ton of people who support us on Patreon, patreon.com/comic book club. We cannot mention how much we appreciate their support.
Yes.
But at the top of the month, we like to do a list of thank yous for everybody at the level who get and above who get thank yous. So let's jump into that. This is always the smoothest, easiest section of the show.
I'll go second.
We really get to put our personalities out there in this section.
Yeah. So let's kick it off, starting with Aaron C. Hollis,
Adam Marks,
Adriel Moreland,
Elena Fontenau,
Amanda Harris,
Amy Gonzalez,
Andrew Tillman,
Benjamin Brown,
Brett Macris,
Chris Terlizzi,
Clemens Luer,
Gorby Dorby Doodle,
Curtis LaRock,
the man Ryan,
Mr. Dan Snow,
Daniel Fuentes,
Daniel Warden,
Danny Heck,
Danny Ollie,
Dennis Scott,
Dustin Remy,
Eduardo Martinez,
Aaron Doran,
Jeffrey Risher,
Gerard DeVilliers,
James Connolly,
Jason Donahue,
Jason Williams,
Joe Crack,
John George,
Jonathan Jong,
Joseph Kelly,
Joshua W. Broxson,
Catherine Anenson,
Casey Newhaven,
Kevin Grimes, nailed it, Pete,
Kevin Kleinrock,
Kieran Broderick,
Cody Thomas,
Lee Brown,
Liwana Thomas,
cute, Luke Asink,
Mark Carrillo,
Mark Kiefer,
Mark Zeller,
Megan Thigpen,
Michael Sturgeon,
Mike Dargenio,
Mitchell McDonald,
Nadia C.,
Nate Lindley,
Nick Grayson,
Omnia Soul Art,
Pedro A. Rangel.
Perry Taliaferro.
Pete's Punisher Slippers.
Nice. Pete 2020. Still running.
Primetime Paulie G.
Rahadian Sastriardio.
Pretty good. Sarah Schaefer.
Scott Carpenter.
Timonelia Rush.
The 12 bench.
Tiago Nascimento.
Tina Ann.
Victor Perez.
W. Blaine.
Will Buchanan.
Pika's Viral Comics.
And all those and many others have left us far too soon. So we, of course, pay tribute to their names.
Oh, wow.
No, was that too dark? That was a little dark. Sorry.
Pete, I like that you lined it up so you got to say Lewanda's name in this one. You really
that's
scored.
The first time that's happened, honestly, which is kind of amazing.
Time, yeah.
All right. Enough business out of the way. Let's get into it and kick it off with our first guest here. I'm going to invite him into the stream. He's one of our favorite guests of the show. I don't think we've had him on for a while, though. But he's the creator of Savor, Neil Kleid.
Yeah. What's going on?
Hey, Neil. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm sorry if there's a little bit of an echo. I'm here in my basement.
Coming at us from the arcade.
Yeah.
I love this lifestyle.
Yeah.
Wait, what do you have back there? I see Space Invaders.
Space Invaders and Star Wars.
Oh,
Who's got the high score?
Is that the Star Wars that you would like sit in the cabinet, but a smaller version?
So they have that. They have a version where you actually sit in a little seat, but I just got the stand-up one with the light-up marquee, and I got it in May as a birthday present, and it hasn't worked.
Happy birthday.
Yeah.
Wait, it didn't work? Is that what you
it
said?
doesn't work.
Oh, no.
Oh, great.
It worked for like an hour, and then
That's all you need. That's all the fun
I mean, I'm done now, right? And then the controller broke, and now I've been like in like a mad help ticket war with the company to try to get it fixed. But yeah,
they're just trying to give you the authentic arcade experience.
Yeah, right. The ticket is mostly like turn it off, turn it on, turn it off, turn it on, reboot. So
let me ask you: have you tried turning off your targeting computer?
I try to stay on target when I'm on my game.
Stay on target.
Use the force, Neil.
Yeah, just close your eyes and be like, "This is great. I love it." Neil, excited to chat about this. You have a project. This has now been a long time coming, and it's still a while off at this point, called Savor.
Right.
It's a very fun concept. I'm a huge fan of like cooking comics, cooking manga, cooking all of that stuff. So what's your take on it? Give us the pitch for the book.
Sure. So yeah, the book has been I've been pitching it around for a while. Over the last couple of years, I've been telling people that my focus has been moving away from, I've always liked to do stories about legacy, right? Like father-son legacy. I'm especially if you're into comics, I've always been into like Green Lantern, Flash. There's this legacy of heroes, legacy of parents and all that. And a lot of my early graphic novels really focus on that father-son relationship. But now, as I'm a father myself, I'm starting to think about stories in terms of the relationship I have with my kids. And I always wanted to create a book for my daughter that was very, it was an adventure story, and it's very like, a strong character and somebody that she can look at as a role model with a lesson, especially as of the four of them, she's the one that's mostly kind of been getting into graphic novels lately. But I've also wanted to do a cooking book, like a food book for just forever. I watch the Food Network channels, I watch travel channels, Man vs. Food, all that stuff. And I always wanted to kind of do a book about that. And I figured this was a great place to combine the two. So what Savor really is, it's a story that has this fantastic deep layer world. And it's about an adventuring chef who is from this island. And I don't know if you guys have read the graphic novel Hicksville by Dylan Horrocks, which is about like the utopia for comics in New Zealand. It's this like place where people go, and it's there's a library of every comic that has ever been made or could have been made but never was made, right? So if you're like a cartoonist, it's like the place to be. And this island that my character Savor lives in is kind of that for food. It's a place where like you go and you learn everything about food. And the idea is that they're not just chefs, but they're also warriors. So they learn how to cook and fight at the same time. And there's always like a protector of the island. So Savor is kind of next in line. And at the beginning of the book, she leaves the island for 6 years to go and learn how to cook and fight from people around the world, right? It's like Batman going off to the world to learn how to be Batman.
Awesome, yeah.
And she comes back after 6 years, and when she comes back, she finds that the island has been taken over by a band of pirate demon chefs, and she now has to basically face the 5 deadliest restaurants on the island to assemble pieces of a magical sword to beat the demon. So it's kind of like Top Chef meets Legend of Zelda.
Oh God, really hitting the mark with me right there. That is solid gold.
So what's solid gold is actually the art team is fantastic. The pencils and the inks have been done by John Broglia, who I met at an event here in the city, and he and I have been wanting to do a book for a while. And so he did the artwork, and the colors are being done by Frank Reynoso, who did Kings and Canvas with me on Comixology, which was my Game of Thrones meets Rocky like boxy fantasy book.
Yeah.
And the pages are just fantastic, and they've really, like, as much as I've kind of put into the world, they really took it and evolved it in a way that I hope people love it. I mean, the story's got a message. It's a lot of fun. I think we kind of need a fun all ages story right about now.
Yes.
And there's a lot of food. You know, it'll make you hungry.
So, I mean, on that note, one of I think the most challenging things about trying to write a food book is the recipes, because you can't be like, all right, your challenge is make a PB and J and then go from there.
Recipes in the name.
How'd you vet that stuff? How'd you put that together for the book?
So, I mean, I cook. I do a lot of the cooking here in the house. My wife does as well. Obviously, we kind of share that. But I've always, like, I buy a lot of cookbooks. I read a lot of cookbooks. What was cool about this one is that it's set in like on a Polynesian island. It's fictional, but a lot of the culture, a lot of the language and the cuisine is based on Hawaiian culture and cuisine. So I've been doing a lot of reading and kind of research on a lot of the cuisine that's coming off the island, or was actually originated on the island. So you'll see a recipe in there for spam musubi, which is kind of like spam wrapped in rice and nori leaves, and some other stuff. There's luau, which is there's a lot of really intense historical recipes and things that hopefully people will find themselves intrigued by that they haven't seen before. So a lot of it was me just kind of reading and doing the research and talking to people. And then what was great was we had I don't know if you call him like a cultural consult, a guy who's been basically taking my script, and he lives in Hawaii, he lives on the island, and he's sort of vetting my work, not just from a sense of making sure that everything is culturally correct, but also to make sure that the cuisine is right. I've had some local chefs kind of look at my work as well to make sure that I'm not saying or doing something that just is super off base. Because one of the cool things about Savor is that not only does she fight with a sword or a knife or what have you, but she actually fights with food. So there's one cool scene that I love where she basically throws up an onion and slices it, and the onion kind of hits the people in the face, and that blinds them for a short. But there's other things that they kind of do with the ingredients, which I thought was really intriguing, and a lot of it was inspired by my own cooking, by things that I've done, and I've noticed, like, oh, this kind of oil is a high heat oil. It really, like, if I take this oil and put it on my steak, it won't burn, right? So what does that mean for somebody who's being pelted with fireballs, right? Can I put that on myself and stop the burn? And a lot of that really thinking went into John and I's creation of this world. So I hope people like it.
Now, when you're cooking and also researching, does that ever make your dinner like sort of messed up?
My dinner gets messed up on its own. I mean,
yeah, good.
Yes, I'm a cartoonist, comic graphic designer. I don't really cook for a living, so a lot of the times I'll make something, and my kids will say, "Can we order pizza now?"
And do you cook with your daughter as well, or I guess what dishes do you cook with your daughter?
So she likes to bake. I don't bake, so she does a lot of that with my wife. I do a lot of like grilling and chili and like heavy meat and potato kind of stuff. I do that with my son. My son likes to cook. He actually likes to mix drinks, which has been interesting.
Come on, you got to get a little bartender at your house. It's important.
Yeah.
I just want to say, as someone who's worked, in the back of house at kitchens, I've always found chefs to be the best warriors. They've always been the loudest and
they take no shit, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're.
Let me say, as someone who worked exclusively in the front of house, chefs are often psychopaths, so they make good warrior villains. Perhaps.
We have a couple chefs here. I mean, don't
as
do
somebody who has eaten at restaurants, I'd also like to chime in on this. No, I don't know anything.
I don't know. The official chef of Comic Book Club, Stray Bullet, Brett Macris, says, who works at Couchon in New Orleans, please go there if you're in the area. Very good food. He says, agree. This is true about chefs being truly some of the craziest people on earth. And I love it, but it's true.
Yeah. We got a question here on YouTube from JPeeler999. Wait, is there a garbage plate on the menu for one of the 5 deadliest restaurants?
There is no garbage plate. I tried to figure out how to get like a plate lunch in there, which is huge in Hawaii. That's like a big thing.
Yeah.
We didn't really include that. There just wasn't, like, it didn't naturally come up. Okay. We're hoping to do 2 more books, and obviously the first one sells. And I'm collecting, like, I've got a little notepad of all the recipes and all the ingredients that I want to try to get into it, and trying to figure out how to get a deadly plate lunch on the menu is definitely on my plan.
Is there any chance any of the characters are sucking on a cheesesteak at any point?
Come on, man. Come on.
Sucking on a cheesesteak.
Oh, boy. I'm sorry, Neil. Sorry you had to
that's our Zoo Morning Crew moment that we did.
Oh, that's all right.
So when is this coming out? Before we let you go, plug when people can look forward to.
Sure. So it's going to be hitting stores January 2021 from Dark Horse Comics. It is going to hopefully be, I think, in the September previews. It was in previews, but then because of the whole pandemic situation, it got pushed off a little bit because of everything. So look for it January. I'm hoping if next season conventions become a thing again, to show up and start signing at a few. So.
Awesome. Anything
Neil,
else you want to?
I want to say before if you're headed out, I want to say I really love where your head's at. I feel like the books you're putting out there and the way you talk about comics online, like your thinking is so, like, it feels like you're really meticulously getting into the details of these worlds you're creating, and I really appreciate just watching you work that way.
I appreciate that. Cool. Thanks. No, I mean, look, I've been doing this for a while, right? And after a certain amount of time, you want to spend the proper amount of time on the proper amount of planning. And instead of trying to like whack-a-mole 50 different ideas, I try to take a few ideas and really sit with them. One of the big things that actually, and I know that you got to move on, but one of the big things that I've been trying to do with my last couple of stories is create a world Bible for each one, right? And it literally is just a Word document with this really extensive outline that looks at like the history of the last couple of years, characters, locations, relationships, what have you. I did that with Kings and Canvas. We did it with Savor. I'm doing it for something that I've got coming hopefully in October 2021, which is even a larger departure than what I've done now. It's a cool like horror thriller book. But awesome. The idea is to really just think about not just the world, but also how, especially like that, the horror thriller one's really cool because it's set in New York and it's really contemporary. And as a creator right now, especially during, the fact that the world is changing and the pandemic is here and what have you, contemporary could mean a completely different thing a year from now. So yeah. I mean, you think about like, if you're setting a character in a story right now, like what are they dealing with in terms of cultural and societal and also medical, right? So I'm trying to put a little bit of work into it. Not that I didn't before, but really like making sure that things are planned out for the story.
I love it. It takes more time and more sort of confidence in like what you're working on to be like, okay, I got to lock it down for this one, as opposed to just being like, here are 10 ideas I'm working on. But I think it pays dividends in the long run.
Thank you.
It's very
appreciate that.
Yeah, congratulations, Neil. Definitely looking forward to checking out Savor and everything else coming from you. Always good talking. Good luck with the Star Wars arcade. Hopefully it works.
Yeah, that's the real focus. That's what I'm talking about by really putting the time in. Is their Star Wars arcade game.
I'm literally like a week away from sending it back and just buying a damn Oculus.
No, don't give up. There is no never mind. I got stuck.
Do or do not. There is no try, Alex.
I don't know.
You don't know. Everybody drink. Alex doesn't know what he's talking about.
I'm hoping to see you guys again pretty soon in person.
Yes, hope so too. Stay safe out there, Neil. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
What a great dude.
Always good to chat with him. Always good to have him on. And definitely check out Savor. Like I said, a huge fan of food comics. We're going to invite our next guest into the stream here, so hopefully he'll get set up in a second. He's the mastermind behind TKO Studios. Tze Chun, hello.
How's it going, guys?
Hello.
All right.
Good.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I'm very excited to chat with you about everything because you have so many things going on right now. But definitely want to talk about the TKO Studios stuff because you guys have been around for, I want to say 18 months at this point. Is that right?
18 months, yeah.
18 months. And this might sound like I'm pushing off a couple of other comics publishers, but it almost seems, and I'd love for you to explain the model and how TKO Studios is different, but it almost seems like the model of TKO Studios made you more prepared for the pandemic and everything that's been going on in comics than a lot of other publishers.
Yeah, I mean, from the very outset, we tried to do, our editor-in-chief kind of explains it as we started to build TKO's business model, we were doing so many things differently that we were like, why don't we just do everything differently? And so,
good choice.
We binge release our books. So when we launched with 4 titles, and every issue of those 4 titles were available right off the bat. So we launched 24 individual issues of 4 titles. So certainly freaked people out right off the bat. And then we also release in multiple formats at once. So if you're a single issues person, you can do 6 issues. We print everything oversized, so it's 6 oversized issues in a box set, oversized trade paperback or digital. We launch all of them when we launch every series. And then we offer the first issue for free to read at tkopresents.com. Of every single one of our series, so that we can, people can kind of try and figure out which books they're excited about. As a new company, we really wanted to make sure that people knew that we were, the quality of our books, we wanted to speak for themselves. And we also go around Diamond. We do all of our own fulfillment. We do deals directly with comic book stores, and we do deals directly with customers. And so because of that, when Diamond stopped shipping, we were able to continue to ship. And, we did this COVID initiative, which I don't know if you guys have heard about, but starting in March, we started looking around on Instagram and Twitter and seeing a lot of our comic book shop partners closing up shop or doing, 50% capacity, curbside pickup. And I think everyone at the company was like, this is not going to get better, not anytime soon. And so we wanted to do something to show support for the comic book stores. And what we did was, over the course of about 3 months, we allowed customers to, every time they purchased a book from TKO Presents, we sent 50% of that sale to the local comic book shop of their choice. Wow. So we dropped down many of, I think by the end it was maybe 700 or 800 stores. Wow. Where people could choose their favorite store. They didn't even need to, it's like you could choose the store that you went to growing up or whatever. And we would send them the exact same amount that they would have made if they had sold it from their brick and mortar shop, as if they were still open. So over the course of that initiative, we sent over 1,200 checks to over 650 stores. And we were really excited to be able to at least, I think for a lot of comic book shops, everything made a difference at that time. And, now that stores are opening up again, that initiative is over, but we always continue to have new initiatives to help out shops.
That's awesome. So smart. I love just that heads up thinking is something that so many people attempted to try to do in a couple capacities. And that one is actually just logistically successful.
we really try hard. I think that because of who we are as a company, we have the backing and the runway of, a very large company. My co-founder, Sal Simeone, he founded a company called csoft.com, which is our kind of sister company. And we can kind of draw down on the infrastructure of that company and the funding for that company. And for us, what I love about working at TKO is that we have the ability to make big changes and do big things in the comic book industry, but the actual decision-making cortex of the company is very few people. And so literally, like, I mean, I woke up on a Wednesday at 4 a.m. in a cold sweat being like, we need to do something for comic book shops. This sucks. Like, I don't like seeing the stress in our retail partners. And, you know, comic book shops were where I discovered comics to start with. And by 5 hours later, we had come up with the initiative, and we just had to figure out the back end of the programming to make sure that the website worked in order to fulfill those orders.
So this is going back a little bit to when you guys first started, and clearly, based on everything you're talking about, you put in the work with comic book retailers, with fans, etc. And I think we can certainly talk about the creative teams on the books in a second, but they speak for themselves. But given that you are coming from a place where it maybe felt like, oh, this is a bunch of Hollywood guys. They got a development deal. They're coming in. Did you get a lot of pushback from the comic community at first, or was it relatively smooth sailing?
I mean, early on, there was no pushback because nobody even knew who the hell we were. I mean, the first year and a half, honestly, of just, you know, ramping up the company, getting our infrastructure in place, it was a lot of me and Sebastian Gerner, my editor-in-chief, and Carmen McKenney, who did our creator outreach, literally walking up to people in Artist Alley and being like, hey, we're TKO Studios. You can't find out anything about us online. You don't know anything about us. I think one day we will exist. Do you want to spend a year working for us? And I think that the pitch was, I mean, that is the worst version of the pitch, obviously, but we had a lot of stuff in place, meaning that our mandate was we wanted to be the first modern comic book company, or we wanted to modernize the comic book industry, both from a creative standpoint, but also commercially. And the fact that we were trying to do something new, you know, the fact that we were binge releasing our books, the fact that because we were binge releasing our books, they're not tied to a monthly schedule. You know, it's like, I mean, I've worked on television shows where we do 22 episodes a year, you know, 22 episodes every 10 months. Is every episode going to be amazing? No, you know, and just trying to figure out a creative workflow where, okay, let's say you've worked for Marvel and DC, you've made a name for yourself, you're doing 22 pages a month. Do you want to spend, you know, 1.5 times, you want to spend 6 weeks on an issue? You want to spend 8 weeks on an issue? And for us, it was the ability to do binge releasing was also tied to the idea that, okay, why don't we give our artists and writers actually the amount of time it would take them to do their best work? And I think that, you know, with some of our writers and artists, you know, Jeff Lemire, Gabriel Walta, Roxane Gay, Ming Doyle, Garth Ennis, Steve Epting.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, Gabriel Walta for Sentient, which was just nominated for an Eisner, you know, he was like, okay, well, I'm on board. I want to do this book. And I was like, all right, we got to find a colorist for you. And I was just searching through his Instagram and Twitter, and I found this one image that was watercolor. And I was like, I called Gabe, I Skyped him, I was like, Gabe, who did this? Who colored you on this? And he was like, oh, I did. I don't know if you know, but I'm a classically trained painter.
You're like, oh, why don't you take some time and do that, man?
I was like, it looks really good. I was like, can you do that for Sentient? He was like, no, it'll take me 7 weeks to do each issue. And I was like, then we'll give you 7 weeks. And so there's a reason that our book kind of look the way they do, is that from a creative standpoint, you know, we have the workflow that works to make, you know, those books look as good as they can look.
That's awesome.
We got a question here from Eduardo in the comments. Any chance of second volumes for any of the TKO titles, or is part of their policy to make them all one and done?
We certainly are talking about it, and we'll probably have an announcement in maybe a month and a half, about a spiritual sequel volume to one of our books. I think for right now, because we were a newer company, we wanted to experiment with a lot of different kinds of stories in terms of genre. We certainly want to keep it open in terms of if a creator wants to do a second arc of a series, we're certainly open to it.
JMC Hammer says, super impressive. Just ordered 2 books off the website. So if you could add that to our affiliate fees, I would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, which are devastating.
We actually have another question. I don't know if this is too businessy, but on YouTube, Ramsey Hassan says, big releasing books is a bit of a pressure on artists. How do they get paid? A big advance, I bet. Let
me see. What was the question about?
The question is like, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of pressure on the artist for that. So how do you handle that? Do you? I don't know how in the weeds you can get it in terms of.
Listen. So here's the thing about TKO, and we always talk about this. Sebastian Gerner and I, Sebastian came from the comic book world. I came from the film and TV world, which is sometimes also very opaque. But we want to be the most transparent comic book company out there. And so, the truth is that we make it work for writers and artists by paying them what they're worth. We match Marvel and DC's page rates in terms of the page rate, and we also give our writers and artists significant back end, and that's across all media, meaning if it does go to TV, they get a piece of that as well. And the other piece of it that I think is people don't talk about enough is that we pay page rates that match Marvel and DC across the board, meaning colorist, letterer, editor, designer. I think there's a lot of comic book companies where they might splurge on the writer, but then you kind of see the creative team's page rates get whittled down. And I kind of feel that a book is only as good as its weakest link. And that's not even to say that, the colorists or letterers who are working at these other companies, they might just not be able to do their best work, because if you're coloring 8 books a month, because they're paying $50 a page, what do you expect to come out of it? So we want to just make sure that, listen, I have certainly worked really hard at times where I was not making a lot of money, and that did not help me make my best work. It definitely worked against it. So, we put a lot of value in these books. We really feel that, especially coming from, again, I want to be a comic book writer and a comic book artist when I was a kid. I've always loved comic books. And that was part of the reason why, I started the company. But still, I know that there's a certain feeling from fans that, well, what is this company really in it for? Are they here to make comic books, or are they here to make quote unquote IP? My goal was always to make it undeniable that if you look at our books, that it was clear that we wanted to make something that was going to be great comics first and foremost, and then we could worry about the film and TV stuff.
There's no reason those things can't be like, why would people be mad if you were like, yeah, we want to make these and then also make something else? It's like, well, if we make the best comic, we will also have a much better IP to pitch to any sort of other media. The criticism of oh, you're only here to make IP, I think is so if it's good comics, if you're making great comics, which it feels like you are dedicated to making great comics, then enjoy it. Because
from a personal standpoint, we wanted to differentiate ourselves. And part of it was I was looking around, and there are certainly a lot of companies that are just let's spend as little money as possible.
Yeah.
On a comic book. And as a writer and director and producer, there were times where this still happens once in a while where I'll get sent a comic book from an agent, and they'll be like, look at the comic book. Don't look too hard. It looks terrible.
Yeah.
We really want somebody to adapt this. We just have to change everything about it.
Yeah.
Maybe not the title, but maybe the title. And I'm like, why are you even giving me this thing to look at? Why did you?
We love this robot on page 10. That's the thing we want to build the project around, is this one robot. So is there any way to ignore the fact that it takes place in Victorian England and just move forward with the robot on page 10? That's what we're going to focus on.
It's really, and I think that we want to build something where, across the books, there's a certain quality to them. We want to work with a bunch of established creators, but also a lot of up and coming creators. And I think, listen, it's certainly gotten easier to approach creators after our first wave of books came out. But to go back to your earlier question, it was a lot of very awkward conversations for about a year and a half.
If somebody was new to TKO and they wanted to check out one thing to like get their foot in the door, not to make you choose between all your babies, but what would you recommend?
Well, I think you could go to the website, tkopresents.com. And the great thing is if you go on the site, we have 8 titles available right now. We'll have another 4 in the fall. But you can just look at whatever ones you're excited about and then click on free first issues and download. You can get the first free issues sent to you directly. And so you can kind of
That's awesome.
Read through the first issue, see what art or story appeals to you, and kind of go from there. You know, I think that one of the things about TKO was we wanted to build out the comic book readership, and a lot of the things we do. When we first started out, you know, we kind of actually asked ourselves 3 questions at every stage where we were trying to figure out the business model. And the questions were, is this good for creators? Is this good for fans? And is this good for comics? And if something didn't answer those 3 questions, we just wouldn't do it. Or we would find a way where it did answer those 3 questions in the affirmative. And so, you know, the free first issues were a way to say, okay, well, how do we make comics less insular? How do we make it so that if somebody is, say, a Roxane Gay fan, you know, we have a book with Roxane Gay and Ming Doyle, where maybe they know Roxane's work, but they don't know comics. How do we make it as easy for them to get their foot in the door and to see something that, oh, well, maybe I do like this. And if I like Roxane's book, you know, I can request all the other single issues. Maybe I'll like them as well. Because the third thing is the box set. You know, we found that when we first started talking to a lot of people who were kind of interested in, especially individual comics, there's a certain type of collector mentality that's shared between like sneakerheads and toy collectors and comic book collectors. But a lot of people can't collect single issues because they don't have enough to put in a long box or a short box, or they don't know where to put them on their shelves.
Right. Yeah.
There's a box set where the 6 issues go inside the box set, and it goes great on your shelf. It's got a spine, it has a title, and you know, I just think we made a lot of those decisions to try to make it as easy as possible for people to get into reading comics.
It's great. You're getting shouted out in the comments. Neil Kleid, who was just on, is shouting out The Banks, the Roxane Gay and Ming Doyle series. You got Sentient, obviously, and Fearsome Dr. Fang is getting a shout out here as well.
Which is your book, right?
Yes, I co-wrote that one with my friend Mike Weiss. Dan McDade did the art, Daniela Miwa did the colors, and Steve Wands did the lettering.
They are cool. Awesome books. Everybody should check them out. Before we let you go, though, I do have to ask you, I'm a huge Gremlins fan, and you are showrunning the Gremlins prequel animated series. What, if anything, can you tell us about that one?
It'll premiere HBO Max in 2021, 10 episodes, and I think that we have shared the general synopsis, which I can tell you about, which is, you know, in the original movies, there's the old Chinese guy, Mr. Wing, who runs the shop where they find Gizmo at the beginning, and he's kind of his guardian. This is a prequel series that takes place in 1920s Shanghai, and is the story of a 10-year-old Mr. Wing, Sam Wing, as he meets Gizmo, and they go on this adventure through China. And it's very serialized. It's like a big treasure hunting adventure. It's like tonally, it's like Goonies or Indiana Jones.
It's great.
Funny, scary, actiony. Joe Dante is a consulting producer on it. It's been great to like run stuff by him, hear the amazing stories he has about Gremlins. But it's been a lot of fun, and we have a great team on it. We've got incredible animators and character designers and art directors. It's been a wonderful creative experience.
So cool.
Most important question: Gremlins or Gremlins 2?
I mean, if I choose one, Joe Dante will like.
Yeah, how dare you, Alex? Especially because Alex is a huge Gremlins 2 guy, right?
No, she hit me in the head. I mean, I love both of them. I love both of them, and I also love the Key and Peele skit about Gremlins 2.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I was going to ask
So
if you
good.
knew about that. That's funny.
That's great. Good luck.
Like in the writers' room, to be honest.
And obviously, you and I are in the same place, so I'll see you at the bar in 1 second inside our beautiful greenery.
If you just reach, if you see my hand kind of go around your shoulder.
Yeah.
Right.
Look, it's coming. There it is.
Facing each other right now. Say thank you so much for coming on the show. It was a pleasure. Good luck with everything on TKO. Good luck with Gremlins and all of your other projects. Have a great day.
Thank you very much for having me. It's great to be on a podcast like this, and or video cast rather. Yeah, it was nice to follow Neil.
Yeah,
right on.
Thank you so much. Have a good day,
on, man. Good luck. We'll talk to you soon.
Awesome stuff. So cool. Definitely check out everything from TKO. As he mentioned, in case you missed it, there are tons of free books on their website that you can check out right now. Also, look forward to Gremlins, the animated series, coming next year. I'm so excited.
I know you. I love you. You're a fan. You're literally a fan.
I was sitting there. I was sitting there for 20 minutes listening to this crap about comic books.
Alex, obviously you're very tired, but yeah, I feel like your journalistic credentials dropped away for a brief moment.
They really did.
And you exposed your fanboy underneath, and I love it.
I've done, as you guys have done, we've done hundreds of interviews together, and we've done hundreds of interviews in general. They're definitely like being like, "What about Gremlins?"
Probably, I can always tell the questions that come from your heart because your voice cracks when you ask them. And like all great journalists, Maggie Haberman, when she's doing a devastating story about Trump, always her voice cracks just a little bit.
Poor Maggie.
Yeah.
All right, we only got a little bit more time with Pete, so we are going to move on to our next section, which is my favorite section because you all make it up. It's your audience questions. And for your audience questions, as a reminder, all you got to do is drop something and ask a question on Crowdcast, or you can just drop a question in the comments section on YouTube. Either one of those are absolutely fine.
Or just walk up to Pete's where he's living now and ask him directly on camera, and he'll answer it then.
Yeah, absolutely. This is from Edward Doherty. Do the fictional cities of the DC universe have different accents similar to New York versus Boston accents? And if so, are they unique to DC universe and something we've never actually heard? And if so, could you all give us your best interpretation of the accent for your favorite DC city?
That's great. I love that question. Obviously, Gotham people are like, hey, we live in Gotham City, bro.
Like, hey, I'm walking over here. Watch it, Batmobile.
Hey, Batman, get out of my face.
I'd actually be very curious, Justin, to hear what you think an Opal City accent is, because the first thing that comes to my mind, even though this is 100% not accurate, is everybody talks like the Shade.
I like a light British.
Yes,
accent.
they're like, yes, very interesting.
Trained actor. Let's see this.
I actually feel like Opal City would be a little bit more in the sort of New Orleans vibe. It feels a little bit more like that. So it's like sort of a delicate. Well, I guess Starman's going to be coming up here any minute now. It's something like that.
That was glorious.
Yeah. Do they ever? I feel like there has to be some book like that, but like, do they ever do the accent writing in any DC books that you've seen?
I don't think so. Not for the DC cities. That's such a great question to ask, like DC editorial, like what that means to them, or if they've ever had to encounter that. Because I feel like Metropolis sounds like, hey, we got Superman's here. Let's do some news.
Yeah. Oh wow!
I feel like they're 1920s, a classic 1920s New York.
Central City sound like Fargo. Wait, it says what are the twin cities? It's Central City and Keystone City. And I think Keystone is the industrial one and Central City is the more like hoity-toity one. So Keystone City is definitely like, hey, we're from Keystone City. We're fixing cars over here. Our big villain is a guy who's made out of cars. That is I love that question. That's fantastic. Thank you, Edward.
And when was this is a question back out. What's the newest DC city? Like, I feel like are they not adding more? Like, do we get what's their version of the sort of more of the Sunbelt cities or other cities in the country that they need to add?
I was thinking that Far Sector. Yeah, it was like,
Far Sector is a good answer.
Yeah,
I mean, it's accurate. Like, even if it's not another planet, N.K. Jemisin has spent so much time fleshing up the planet, figuring out how the city works, figuring out how the faction works. It's very impressive. But yeah, I feel like I talked about this incessantly, but I just finished a reread of Starman, and it's amazing how much time James Robinson spends on like, here's several pages on the Art Deco nature of Opal City, which is great.
That's one of the reasons why I love the series. Like the absolute dedication to this very tiny bits of that world made it a better series.
Yeah. Question from Brandon Medina over on YouTube. What about Cable's accent from the future?
You're very hard to answer that question, I guess I would say.
Yeah.
Tiny computer voices in the middle.
Yes. I am Cable. Great. All right, here's another one. This is from Beercat PhD. What is a comic book team group that you thought was absurd, bordering on terrible when you first heard about it, but grew to love? For instance, I just watched the Sex Men episode of Doom Patrol and was blown away, innuendo implied, by something I thought I'd for sure hate.
I feel like slightly to the left of the question is the idea that we've been getting a lot of interest in Doom Patrol basically in our world. So we hear you, and we'll talk to you.
Yeah, I'm actually an episode. Yes, I'm an episode behind on Doom Patrol at this point. So I got to catch up. I heard that was great. But team or idea that you thought was too absurd that you thought would hate, but would actually like?
Metal Men for me. Like there was a couple. Different whoever was on the team sometimes was more impressive than others, but I never thought like, oh, this is a great team, I can't wait. But there have been some books recently where I was like, oh, this is actually a lot better than I thought.
This is an old-timey answer, but I'll say the New Defenders back in like, I want to say the mid-90s. Marvel was like, the Defenders are not cool, but you know it is cool. Ghost Rider, the Hulk, Wolverine. Why don't we make them the New Defenders? And I was like, this is stupid. But actually, it was pretty cool to have the those all. It was sort of a precursor to the All Sharps X-Force team, where it was like, let's have the edgy characters hang out and be dangerous.
I gotta say Deadpool, just because a lot of times like having a nonstop joke machine who's breaking the fourth wall just sounds inherently like it would be very annoying. But there have been great runs on Deadpool. Like
great runs.
Really, I think the first one that I read religiously, though, was the Jerry Dugan run, mostly because we were covering it and we were talking about it a lot. But that was something that I felt was Jerry Dugan and Brian Posehn, excuse me. It was so smart because it really got to the emotional underpinning of Deadpool in a way that I hadn't seen before. And I think that's the thing that cut through the joke machine nature of it for me. So, yeah, there you go.
Well, I think the best Deadpool gets back to the core. The original run was like he was always funny, but it was also like sort of tragic, and he was always like on the edge of being like, I'm a monster. And I think those are the best versions of Deadpool.
Also, the Thunderbolt series, I didn't think I would like at all, and I was really impressed with that.
Yeah, there's a comment here from Joe Crack saying, Inhumans I thought would suck, and they do suck. I would highly recommend, if you think that, read the run by Paul Jenkins and Jay Lee, which is awesome.
Yes, that is very good. Paul Jenkins, underrated creator.
Yes, really.
I
don't know what he's done recently, but
I feel like he sort of pops up very randomly. I don't know what else he does as a writer in general, but someone who like really does good work in mainstream comics and sort of on his own stuff as well.
Yeah. Also, Ben Does Slip, this is a good one, says Eternal, specifically the Gaiman run for the art alone. Yeah, that's Neil Gaiman and John Romita Jr., I think.
Yes, I think that's right.
And that's something that I feel like every time they mention the Eternals movie, and we've talked about this, it's like, I've been reading comics my entire life. I don't know. Please don't challenge me to name many of the Eternals, but that book is very good.
Yeah.
Here's a question from Kevin. Speaking of other media, what is some of your favorite comics themed music? Comics themed music. That "I'm No Superman" song from the beginning of Scrubs is pretty good.
Wow. Huge song, obviously. Pocket Full of Kryptonite, right in that same vein.
Yeah. I don't know. Wait, what was that? What was the name of the band that we had on the show a couple of times that I'm blanking on? You have their shirt, Pete.
MC Chris.
Well, we had MC Chris.
Had
Chris.
MC
Fall
Chris.
on Your Sword.
Fall on Your Sword. That's what I'm thinking of.
Yep.
Who are awesome. Danger Mouse is getting a shout out. Kirby Crackle, always very good. I usually kind of like get kind of iffy about comic book music because it feels like putting something cool on something that's not that cool, you know? So it sort of rankles me a little bit, but it's all good. Pete, you somebody called out Run the Jewels did a bunch of Marvel collabs.
Yeah.
I mean, talking about like interviews where we get highly unprofessional, but in the right way. It was at New York Comic Con, you talked to Run, right? From Run DMC.
Yeah, that was the coolest. And he revealed that he sold his records and turntable, or sold his comics to get turntables so that Run DMC could get going.
Now, let me ask you, Pete, do you back that as a choice? That feels like a very anti-Pete move to sell your comics.
What was funny was I was on the phone actually today talking with my mom, and we were talking about like how I'm moving and I'm strapped for cash, and she was like, well, you could always sell your comics. And I was like, well, that's not even on the board of possibilities.
So let me ask you, Pete, what would you sell your comics to buy? If Run sold his comics to buy the turntable, what's your move? You'll sell your comics to buy
nothing. I don't. Why would I sell my comics? I've envisioned a room where it's like a rotation. It's like a clear glass wall, and there's just a rotation of comics that I can sit there, and the comics are just constantly being rotated through, and I can look at them.
Just the covers?
Just the covers, man.
That's a very old man. That's a man has no other senses besides sitting there in a quiet room.
I can just, dive old age in that room.
I don't want to take a step back or anything, but I did, for anybody who has never seen it or never heard us talk about it, I just wanted to call out your interview with Run was hands down the best interview I have ever seen you do, Pete. And I so distinctly remember that because and I don't mean this in a bad way because clearly we have a thing going on, but most of the time in interviews, we'll, throw out a bunch of questions and you'll throw out some random ones and we'll, go back and forth. But the Run one, I remember you're like, I'm going to take this solo. And Justin and I were like, all right. And you interviewed him. And I remember both of us sitting there being like, holy shit, you knew so much about him. He was so into talking to you. It was great. It gives me so much joy to think about that interview.
It was like watching a professional athlete who had been on the bench his whole career, take off his warm-up jacket and be Michael Jordan.
Well, that's very nice. That's probably the nicest thing either one of you have ever said about me. So thank you very much.
Oh, I love that interview.
Check out the interview. I think it's still out there.
It's Eduardo asked is the interview in the Patreon archive. It wasn't on our live show. It was for Newsarama, so you might be able to get it on YouTube or something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll try to look for it and grab it in the Patreon Slack. If somebody reminds me, I'll poke around.
Yeah, let's put it up there.
Yeah. Cool. All right. We got another one here from YouTube. Jace the Archer, what's your most prized comic related toy, statue, bust, Funko? I think I'm going to go with buy an awesome Hulkbuster from Sideshow Collectibles soon. I'll tell you, this is, I can mention a couple of specific things because while I've been moving, all of this stuff has been coming out of the woodwork that I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. I forgot I had this. The two that I can think of offhand, one, and I think we got this for doing interviews for Newsarama or something. It was a signed Fantastic Four Marvel Masterworks Volume 1 by Stan Lee. Which I honestly do not remember what I got it for, but it was for some interview or something.
It sounds like maybe we got that, but you got it.
Yeah. It sounded like maybe after the interview it was sent to us, but maybe you grabbed.
But maybe
it.
it ended up.
I don't know where that came from.
Did you get one? I didn't get one.
I don't have Stan Lee's signature floating around my fucking apartment.
The other one, I have to apologize if this is anybody who's listening to the podcast in particular, because I vaguely remember it was somebody who listened to the podcast who really liked it, who gave this to me. But I found in my bookcase, which I completely forgot about, 3 issues of Wasteland, the comic book that Del Close wrote.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Which that was something that, like, I don't even know if I want to read them just because they're so pristinely preserved in their bags and boards and everything. But that was something that was like very cool and surprising to find, because I had completely, up until that point, eradicated all memory of owning it.
And you're such an improv head. That had to really be like, oh man.
I was like,
of the three of us, it's good that you have that improv relic.
Great. So those are 2 things that I have that you guys want. What do you have?
Oh my God.
I guess the thing I like the most that I've collected over the years is Alex's birth certificate, which I'm going to hold on to. I'm going to really hold on to that for as long as I can. I think we got it from an interview.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm going to be moving at the end of the month, so it's like I'm go through that whole experience that you're going through, but I would have to dig through to see. It's really for me about the cons, like meeting the people and like being able to, like, we've had so many amazing experiences with creators, or like kind of meeting people who we thought were awesome way before we met them in person, and then it kind of like took it to another level. I think now that I'm talking a little bit, I would say the like I've got a couple signed things from Tim Seeley that it, like, really is very memorable for me, and like reminds me of the con where we got to meet the guys behind Lock and Key, and that was kind of like pretty amazing. Yes, my Punisher Shrine is a collection of things that people who worked at Marvel gave me, and then fans gave me, so that is also very special.
But that stuff is so close to being garbage that it's
how dare you?
I mean, yes, to Joe Crack's comment, custom apron, truly in a shrine in my home.
It's in my shrine.
My Starman apron. But let me throw out one other one that I actually, maybe I've told this story before, happened to be unrelated to the show, oddly. I was working in a restaurant that was right next to an art gallery. And we had one of the owners of the restaurant also owned the art gallery. So we had all this art, and Paul Pope was exhibited there and did his printing there. So we had a Paul Pope original, a piece he did for Rolex. He did a lot of branded stuff behind the bar. We had that behind the bar. And so this guy comes in and he's sitting at the bar. He'd come in a couple of days over the course of the week, and he's talking about some of the art on the other wall. And I was like, oh, I actually love this Paul Pope piece right here. I'm a big comic fan, and he made this. And he's like, oh, yeah, I'm Paul Pope. And so I was like, cool. So we talked for a couple hours, poured him a bunch of wine, and we had these brown paper table mats sort of thing. And he had a brush pen in his pocket. He slides his plate out. Of course he did. He slides his plate to the side and is like, he's sort of doodling there. And then he's like, well, let me ask you this. Who's your favorite villain? Not just from comics, but from anything. I was like, oh, yeah, okay. Give me a second. And I walked into the back and was like, I don't know.
Villain of all time.
Yeah. And so I didn't know what to say. And I sort of panic said the Minotaur out of very random. Like, it's not something I think about. No, but I don't know why I said it, truly. Wow. From Greek mythology. And so he draws this epic Minotaur, Theseus, like killing the Minotaur, and it has like a bunch of script on it, and it's just beautiful. I'll post a picture of it. I'm not at my house right now, but when I get home, I'll post a picture of it because it is
treehouse.
What's that? I am in a treehouse. I'm in the Swiss Family Robinson house from the movie Swiss Family Robinson because I'm so far away from society. But I'll post a picture of it. It's a gorgeous thing that he made. As soon as he finished, I rolled it up. I was working a double, so I had to work dinner that night. I hid it in my little locker, and in the middle of dinner service, I kept going down, unraveling it and looking at it and being like, I have this, and kept rolling it up and finally got it framed.
We put out a bunch of other great comments here. I want to read these two first, and then other collectibles that people have got. Ramsey Hassan, though, says, I wonder if Paul Pope did a dolly and paid for his meal by sketches. LOL. And Bandito740 says, Judson had a Gremlins moment. I think that's accurate.
Yes, that is accurate.
Yes. Jace the Archer on YouTube says, cool. Greg Ruckett signed Lazarus 15 for me. I love it. That's great. And then a couple over here, Beercat PhD says a copy of Just the Tips. I got signed by Chip Zdarsky at ECC. Neil Kleid, our amazing guest, says, you're going to be very jealous of this one, Justin. An original Harris page from Starman and an original Sneeberg page from Starman.
Oh, Neil.
This one is very cool. Jay Citizen says, my mom found a box of stuff and in it was a sketch Jeff Johns drew for me of Wildcat at Wizard World 99.
Wow.
It was like 10 at the time. And he stood in the DC booth and just talked to me about writing Forever Good Times. I feel like, Pete, wasn't one of your trivia questions last week or the week before that Jeff Johns actually went to the Kubert School? Is that right?
Yeah, as an artist.
No idea. That's amazing. Cool. And Edward Doherty says, I have a Darth Vader shower loofah. Love it.
Nice. Made by Darth Vader. That's very rare. Hold on to that.
Question here on YouTube from Nelson Martinez. Do you guys think that Stargirl will remain the high quality show that it is now, that is predominantly CW and not the DCU for season 2? P.S. Love the show with the exception of Mikey, of course.
Yes. Thank you for being a realist.
So for those of you who missed the news, Stargirl was picked up for season 2. It's been airing on DC Universe Monday mornings and then Tuesday nights on the CW. It's been a huge hit for the CW in particular. And so season 2 has been picked up as a CW original, which means it won't air on DC Universe.
Oh, man.
It'll just air on the CW. And the CW streaming. It'll still be free. Like it'll be free on the CW streaming platforms because they're pretty generous and good about that stuff.
DC gives you the longer app. CW is the one cutting shit up.
But we shouldn't be complaining about this. This is for the best. The fact that the show is a success, and
I'm very happy that it's getting picked up. But they're Barb or Mikey out of the goddamn show.
That they're saying, let's consolidate our viewerships to make sure we can keep making more of this. So the numbers will, if anyone's watching a DC Universe, they will come over to CW, and we'll get fewer Mikey scenes because who cares? It'll be great.
What do you mean, who cares? That's the best part of the show.
Do you think they're going to get Mikey back for season 2, or will he be too busy?
They got to cut the budget somehow, and the candy budget is out of control, honestly.
Yeah. Worth it. It's worth it.
To answer the question, though, I think it's going to be exactly the same. I mean, a lot of people have been talking about the budgetary thing, and granted, like, DC Universe is like, how can we hemorrhage money today? That's basically their whole MO.
That's their business model. It's a Brewster's Millions. They're in a Brewster's Millions situation.
They really are. Yeah, like, I like it. I like the service, but it's just, I don't know. They are not making money on it.
But they are turning out some great stuff. I mean, a Harley Quinn animated series is like hands down one of the best animated series of all time. It's really great.
And that's the kind of stuff that will save them, and it will keep being a pipeline to HBO Max, and like it'll be, it's good. Everything is good. Like, we shouldn't be sad about any of this.
No, Joe Crack says Stripe on the CW isn't going to look anywhere near as good, right? And I disagree with that. It's actually, the thing that's probably not totally clear is it's the same production company. It's all coming from Warner Brothers. And feel free to take a drink after this, when I talked to Jeff Johns for my day job about this, he mentioned very specifically that them doing.
I worked the day job.
I got a job. But he mentions very specifically that them doing experiments and figuring out how to do Gorilla Grodd on the Flash is the thing that allowed them to be able to do Grundy on Stargirl. So like, even though like it's, first of all, it's not really changing anything, but it's also, it's the same crew. It's the same production company. It's going to be the same level of quality. I do think like later in the run, will they change the budget potentially? But it's going to be the same showrunner, same crew, same cast, everything. It's going to be the same show, just not on DC Universe.
And I don't know. I mean, I obviously as a line producer, I see a lot of budgets, but the numbers. I don't think that DC Universe is going to be is a money factory for a show like this. If it's a collab with the CW, they're going to want to keep the quality where it is. They're not going to be like, well, sorry, we're cutting 6 weeks out of the post schedule to not do any CGI on this show. Like, they're going to make it look good. And if they don't, if the budget does shrink, they will write around that so they don't get in the position where they're like, hey, here's a garbage version of Solomon Grundy that no one will like.
Well, and also, if anything, it's going to be cheaper because they already have everything set up. They've already built the sets. They've created the effects. So,
and it's a success. They don't want to. If it's a show is successful, they're not going to be like, well, here's a worse version of it. Like, it's so rare to have a successful show. Like, look at Katie Keene, which we talked about a lot. Like, they did not pick that up because it wasn't successful enough for the money they were spending on it. So when you have a success, they're going to continue to spend the money on it.
Yeah, that actually segues into another question here that I am going to find about Katie Keene. Hold on. Let me find it. Oh, here we go. This is from Tina Hoven. What are your thoughts on the cancellation of Katie Keene? I'm not shocked, but a little disappointed. It was an uneven season, but the show was on its way to finding itself. So again, if you haven't heard the news, Katie Keene was canceled. They have another month to shop it around at this point, and they are planning on doing that. But it kind of seems, based on everything that the cast and crew is saying, that show is done.
Yeah, I would think it'd be tough to quote unquote shop that around at this point. Like, it's a show that sort of made its splash, so it'd be hard to replicate that. I really enjoyed the season. I thought it was great. I thought it was a great cast of characters, and it was the amount of conversations we had on our podcast that got personal for us, I think, was amazing. And the fact that we were able to be inspired to have those conversations out of a CW show that was, based on a underserved Archie comic, like, that is an achievement.
Pete, you probably have some feelings about this one.
Yeah, it's tough because we put a lot into the, KO relationship, and, not to be able to have that pay off is very heartbreaking.
You think that was the mistake they made? Well, and I said this in our Patreon, and you never responded, Pete, but how do you feel knowing that she ended up with the prince? Based on the last episode.
That's not true. That's a
in the elevator, and in the elevator in the last episode, like, she looked at him and it was like, okay.
So what? That doesn't mean anything. She knows that she.
Where the fuck is KO? KO's out of the. He's
no.
He wasn't.
If you would have talked to one of the writers on the show, they would have said that it was there, that we were going to have them hooked back up again, because that was very obvious. But to get back to a little bit about what we're saying, though, like, that show was a little bit all over the place, but really had moments and pockets of just beauty, joy, openness, and they had something at times that was really great. Unfortunately, it wasn't all the time. They were, it takes a little bit to kind of get your legs as a TV show. So it's just unfortunate that it ended before it could really begin, because there was a lot of heart there, and it was pretty powerful. And I'm sad to see it go.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it was also, and a lot of people have called this out, but a very unabashedly queer show and a very inclusive show, which is rare on TV, and it's certainly rare on broadcast TV versus cable. So that was amazing and laudable in and of itself. I think to get back to what you were saying, Justin, from a business standpoint, it just had a lot of things against it. Like, you look at the other stuff in the Archieverse, Riverdale is just a shock a minute. It gets people talking because constantly they up themselves in terms of, I can't believe what's happening right now. Sabrina works the same way while being more cohesive as a storytelling unit, where it's just, I can't believe they're doing this, but making this work. And it's working against your opinion of the squeaky clean Archie comics. Katie Keene leaned into that squeaky clean. Like, there was still sex and there was still adult content and everything, but it was something that felt more pure and more true to the Archie comics. And
it was arcing towards sweetness, which I think is a difficult what shows are like that? Like it's such a rare thing, and I think that's one thing we were really glommed onto about it. Is like, oh, this reminds us of our lives in New York, and the sweet moments we had being people here, and it's just hard to have that apply to a ton of people.
It just doesn't. It does. Pete has to go. You have to go, Pete. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
we're gonna keep talking.
What about trivia? What are we doing here?
Yeah, you got it, buddy. You take it. I wrote it, but I'm sorry that we didn't get it.
Very hard.
Email it to or text it to Justin or me, and we'll figure it out. Thanks,
okay,
Pete.
great. I'll do that
text
right now.
it to us.
Great.
I'll just keep this camera running, and then I'll.
Perfect. That's great. All right.
Yeah, definitely run in and out of
really
the
keep it
shot as much as possible.
What is he doing? That's the worst of all possible.
This is good. This is a valuable. Pete definitely understands how production works, because this is definitely what you want: is an empty seat. CNN does this a lot when one of their talking heads can't be there. They just
constantly leaving to do birthday parties and things. Just to wrap up with what we were talking about with.
So those of you listening, not only is Pete just gone, but they're in the background literally having this conversation. Pete,
just turn it off, Pete. He can't hear us anymore. That's so ridiculous.
I love it.
Also, he's not going to make it back.
I love it.
Call for half an hour. Just to finish up what we were saying.
He just muted us also. It's perfect.
Great. Just to finish up what we were talking about with Katie Keene, I think it didn't have the ratings. It didn't turn it off, Pete. It didn't have the ratings. It didn't have the social conversation. I think critically it was like people liked it, but it wasn't a critically acclaimed show in the way that would have potentially saved it. And clearly the streaming numbers were there. I think it was also really hurt by just the whole clusterfuck behind HBO Max existing, where normally it would have gone to Netflix and it probably would have gotten some good streaming numbers there, but nobody's really watching HBO Max, so they couldn't make a good enough argument for, look at the stream numbers on HBO Max. People will come back for a season 2. So, well, it's done. Here's my last take that I'll say about Katie Keene that I think we did talk about a bit on the podcast. It should have been a Josie and the Pussycats show. Like, I think that's the biggest thing that hurt it right out the gate is it didn't have the name recognition.
Wow.
Honestly, like call it Josie and the Pussycats. People know what that is. They're like, oh, I want to watch that. You call it Katie Keene, people didn't know what Katie Keene was. I don't know.
That's interesting. Obviously, it would have been a wildly different show if she was the lead, but I guess not that much. It would have just downplayed. It would have sort of flip-flopped the time you spent with each of those stories, and it would have given us much more of Josie dealing with her career and relationship, and we would have known the Pussycats much more, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Well, anyway, it is done for the moment, but I guess we'll know for sure by the end of the month. I don't know if we can answer this one, but this is from Joe Crack. Considering Pete's hatred of DC's arguably most popular Silver Age heroes, are there any Silver Age heroes from the comics Pete actively loves? Great. Let's answer that for Pete since he's left a blank window.
Ooh.
Silver Age heroes that he loves.
It is interesting, well observed that Pete doesn't like Silver Age heroes. That's sort of odd, isn't it?
Yeah, that is weird. I think he just doesn't like old timey things because they're not shooting people with guns. If anything, he should go back to like the original Masked Men because they were constantly killing people.
Truth. I'm trying to think of a Silver Age hero he would love. Is there one? I guess he likes Silver Agey Green Arrow stuff. Maybe Green Arrow.
Maybe. I guess let's check back in on this one either next week or if we go until 8:40. All right. Eduardo says, inspired by our guest from TKO Studios, Tze Chun, how do you guys feel that the increase of comics IP and other media has affected comics? Do you see it more or less risk-taking? Is it a non-factor? I think you had a good answer about this one, Justin.
About IP, I think, well, based on what TKO is doing, it's like getting your ducks in a row in a really professional way, and I think they're doing a good job of this. Is like, hey, let's make great comics, but we also have the apparatus to develop those great comics into great television and movies. Being able to put the quality at the front end of that as well as the back end is different than a lot of models that were around like 5-10 years ago, where it was people being like, hurry up, put this comic out so we can sell the movie that is also already in production. And the comic can be bad because the movie's already sold. So I think TKO is being smart about it by being sort of monopolistic about it.
Not to post game our interview later on in the podcast, but the big takeaway for me from talking to him about TKO Studio stuff is the fact that he called out the colorist for a book, which was like nobody who is running an IP farm ever does that, ever. So that to me was a big tell that like he actually has.
They don't know the colorist.
Exactly. Like, they have color, these comics? Huh. I don't know. Wow. This is a question from
someone colors these. Cool. My kid colors. Sorry, I'm very rich.
Here's a question from Lion Man. Why doesn't Stargirl staff just write somewhere what's on its mind? It seems to be sentient. It can fly and shoot beams. So what's the problem? I think, I mean, not to go back to my talk to Jeff Johns for a preview piece or anything, but he said that there is like a whole story with the staff that they have planned out for, I think, 5 seasons or something like that. But it's definitely like there's a backstory there. Whether it's tied to comics or not, we don't know, but there's something going on with the staff more than we know. It's not going to be told in the first season, but it's going to play out eventually. Cool.
That's super interesting. I can't believe they're doing that to really lay in a backstory to the staff that we won't know for a very long time, because it feels very present.
Yeah. I like that because to me it says that Jeff is thinking like a showrunner for the show, which is what he should be doing, because, you know, pursuant to our conversation about dude running TKO Studios, talking about the colorist, it's the same sort of things with like comic writers turned showrunners, where they're not necessarily thinking about the long-term plan with things. They're just sort of writing as we go. So I don't know, but it's good. Here's a question from Ben the Border Collie. Are there other cooking or food related comics you'd recommend? My go-to answer would have been Starve, but you know, Brian Wood got himself canceled. Yes, that is true. Yeah. The Truth. two manga
Neil Kleid took my answer in the comments. Chew. Chew's a good one.
Yeah, Project X Cup Noodle. I don't know what that is, but two manga that I'd mentioned. There's one called Iron Walk Jan, which is an insane manga about a dude who's just insanely angry and goes into these cooking competitions, but it's great and crazy. There's another one called Oshinbo, which gets a little more deeper into the food stuff. Stray Bullet says Get Shiro. I think it's Get Yiro, the one by Anthony Bourdain, which is also real good. At some point, I'll tell my story about Anthony Bourdain, which is one of my favorite moments in professional life ever, having to tie with that book. But
did you interview him as well? Because I interviewed him when we were doing San Diego Comic-Con, and I interviewed him for that book. Did you also?
Yeah, I did. So it was when I was with MTV Geek, and DC was like, hey, we're having an event to celebrate the launch of Get Euro at Les Halles downtown. And I was like, oh, yes. Okay, I'll come to that. That would be great. That sounds amazing. And we went there, and there were like, I want to say generously 10 press people there, and just Anthony Bourdain in this private room at Les Halles And it was weirdly awkward because we weren't talking to or anything. He was just kind of standing there. The press people who I all knew were all standing together. But the two things that happened to that beyond the interview with him were, one, they were passing around hors d'oeuvres the entire time, and they passed around bone marrow. And they were like, "Do you want some bone marrow?" And I said, "Sure, I'll try it." And I was the only one who tried the bone marrow. And across the room, Anthony Bourdain pointed at me. It was like, "Bone marrow, good man." I was like, "Oh, he's proud of me." And then the second thing that happened was when we were...
He's proud of me.
Yes, Daddy is proud of me. And then at the end of the interview, we were both drinking beers, and he clinked beers with me. And I was like, "Oh, I got to cheers with Anthony Bourdain. That's amazing." So that was great. And he is missed. Ooh, Straight Bullet also has an Anthony Bourdain bone marrow story for real. That's exciting. I almost feel like we need to bring you into the stream for that, Brett. Brett, I don't know if we can do that. Here, Brett, I'm going to bring you into the stream so you can tell your bone marrow story, because I want to know what it is.
He's ready.
Yeah, there we go.
That's the kind of people we are. We hear a bone marrow, and we're like, "Bring it."
Hi, that was weird.
Yeah.
Hey, Brett, what's going on? Okay, this is pursuant to our comic book podcast. Tell us your bone marrow story.
So I was a chef in Los Angeles for about 10 years or so when I first started cooking, and I was the chef. I started as a sous chef at a place called Campanile, which is no longer there, but he used to fly out and do book signings all the time. And he would, like, we did probably hosted like 3 of his book signings where we would cook stuff from his books, and he would just stop in for like an hour. And he was always wasted. And he was always like, he just got off the plane and he'd been drinking. And then I was cooking one night. It was just me on the line. The rest of the line cooks that were taking a break or they were off, and we weren't busy. And he comes back stumbling with shaking a glass of whiskey. And he's like, "Hey, man, what are you cooking there?" And I was sitting there basting the steak out of his book. It was his recipe, and it has bone marrow on the steak. And so there's the bone in the pan with the steak, and you baste that. You're basting the steak, and then I'm basting the bone marrow. And then he's like, "Oh, wow, that's great. That's great." He's like, "You're doing a great job." And I was like, "Thanks, chef." And he was like, yeah. You're going to be a sous chef one day. And I said, "I already am, chef." He was like, "Yeah, do it." And he took a big drink, and then he stumbled off into the bar.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, I got to meet him like 3-4 times at that restaurant just for that. He also did a bunch of like Food Network stuff in there too, where he was just getting started with those shows. It was right around that time, so he was like my boss, my chef, was a big celebrity chef in LA for a long time. So same thing.
So cool.
Yeah,
Brett, thank you. Thank you for
when
sharing.
I interviewed him for his comic book, he was so chill and just like super into that actual comic book process as well. Like, it was great.
Cool.
Awesome. Thank you, Brett. Great. If anybody else has any bone marrow stories they want to share about Anthony Bourdain, definitely let us know. We got one here from...
there's got to be a bunch of them out
there. From Nelson Martinez. Do you guys watch any manga anime? If so, what are your faves? I just recently got into My Hero Academia and Death Note, and I'm loving them. This is another question for Pete, I feel like. I will say it's not anime.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. He's been doing Cowboy Bebop very intensely.
Yeah. This is not exactly anime, but I started watching Avatar with the kids, which for months, well, I don't know if it's been months, whatever it was put back on Netflix, they were like, "No, we're not going to watch that. No. And we finally watched it. And after one episode, they were like, "This is the best and we love it," which was great.
Yes. Avatar is truly one of my favorite shows.
So good. Here we got a question from Jay Citizen. Does the Joker like improv? Do you think we get to the point where part of his origin is getting tossed out of an improv class instead of being a hacky Catskills comic? Great question. I definitely think if they make a sequel to Joker, it should be him taking classes at UCB.
I mean, I feel like, Alex, do you feel like the Joker, you came up to the sketch world mostly. Do you think you feel closer to the Joker from your, in relation to your career, right?
Yeah, Joker is more of like a sketch guy than an improv guy. I think so. He does stand up in the movie, but you can tell that he wants to be like on the Sousans or something like that.
It would be. I'd be curious if he was based in as an improviser, how it would change the character, because technically he wouldn't need as much makeup or as many props. It'd be just a lot of object work and just devastating sort of choices. And there would be a much smaller audience, obviously.
Right. Well, if they wanted to, they could base it on Wastelands, the comic book by Del Close that I idolize and love so much.
You're constantly bragging about.
I really am. This is a big question. What's y'all's favorite book, not comic book? Favorite book,
great call.
Man, I don't know. I'm trying to think about a book.
I've been a Kurt Vonnegut guy my whole life, so I would go to bat for almost any of his work.
Edward Doherty says In Cold Blood. That's a good one. Man, I don't know. Favorite book. I'm trying to think of anything that like I've read multiple times, but honestly, particularly since I've had kids, I have only read comic books just because it's quicker. Like it's so frustrating to try to read a book and get interrupted every 2 sentences versus a comic book. It's like, all right, at least I've gotten through 2 pages and then I could go do something else and then I can come back,
Nice. So your favorite book is Madeline or Brown Bear?
My favorite book is Cat in the Hat. Yes, exactly. We forgot to do this. Nelson Martinez says, salute. What is everyone's beverage of choice this evening? I guess we'll never know what Pete is drinking. Justin, what are you drinking right now?
He's drinking a birthday. I was drinking a Mezcal Negroni. So Mezcal, Campari, and sweet vermouth. It was very good.
Nice. Nothing too fancy for me. I'm just drinking a Two-Hearted Ale. Yesterday, after moving for
great choice,
probably 18 hours straight, on the way back, I grabbed a 6-pack of Two-Hearted, sat on the floor of the kitchen, and looked at absolutely nothing for like 10 minutes and just drank a beer. It's very nice. I didn't want anything complicated or weird or anything like that. Just a Two-Hearted Ale. That's all.
Good on you. And if Pete was drinking High Life, I think that was accurately observed by everybody in the stream.
Interesting. Last question we got here from Joe Crack. Does Stargirl not coming back to DC Universe for season 2 and Doom Patrol on HBO Max mean bad things for the future of DC Universe? I mean, I think everybody knows that their future, like the clock is ticking away for DC Universe at this point.
Yeah, it's going to be folded into HBO Max. And I don't mind the idea of they're slow playing a little bit to, if they have another hit, they can be like, look, this is coming to HBO Max and pull as many subscribers as possible over to that. But not a huge outlook for DC Universe in general.
Yeah, it's a good service, particularly if you like comic books, which I assume most of our listeners and viewers do. Yeah. There's a really good back catalog there, probably better than the video stuff. But yeah, it's just, it doesn't have subscribers. Like, to be perfectly blunt about it, most comic books probably have what? Like at the high end, 80, 90,000 readers a month, most probably not even that, like 20 to 30,000. Yeah. And they're not marketing to the people who watch the DC movies, which even that isn't as big as the Marvel movies. They're marketing to the comic book readers, which is a limited audience for a streaming service. So there's just no way that they can make their money back. And I think everybody knew that up front, and they decided to go forward with it anyway, but just didn't figure out a way to make it worthwhile anyway. So I don't know. As a creator of
but
stuff,
if anything, it should be the flip, where they market based on the TV shows and market backwards to the comic book, which maybe they can do coming out of HBO Max in a way that might be great.
The two things, so Jojo Crack says not having the CWs on there is also hurtful, right? Maybe not hurtful, but certainly hurt them, not having the complete catalog of DC stuff, which is the same thing that's hurting the HBO Max right now. Is like they have a DC hub and it's sparse. They do not have a lot of stuff on there, which is a huge bummer.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, like, I actually forgot the second thing that I was going to say. I'm sorry.
Yes, drink. There's no shame in that, Alex. You're tired and people need to drink because of it.
Yes, I am very tired. All right. Pete has not sent us trivia, so we're not going to do it. We could probably delay for 10 minutes, but I don't.
No, I have it. I have it.
Oh, you got it. You got it. All right, then in that case, it is time for trivia with Justin Tyler.
Written by Pete LePage. We just need a one first hand up person to raise their hand in any capacity.
Ooh, we got one over here.
And then I will read. There it is. Ben does slip. Pete has not left the stream. Pete is in the stream. You just see his slowly setting sun on the apartment that he lives in.
Hello. Are you wearing a comic book club shirt?
Hello.
Yay!
I am. Yeah. Yes.
Love it.
Already a winner. I feel very good about this.
All right. Justin's going to do some trivia for you.
So this is very
all right. Without the trivia present.
Yes. This is written by Pete LePage. It's very easy. I'm going to read you some questions. There will be 3 answers. And I guess I will, what's weird is he doesn't list in here which answer is correct. So I guess I'm just going to guess. And then you can also guess, which is fun. A classic trivia host doesn't list the answer. And today's trivia this is actually pretty exciting. It's on topical comic news. So, question number 1. Audible released a trailer for the Sandman series. Who is the voice of Morpheus? Is it A, James McAvoy? Is it B, Lawrence Fishburne? Or C, Matt Salinger?
Gonna go with A, maybe.
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know the answer, but I think it's A.
What?
Alex, why don't you do research on these questions?
I'm gonna look stuff up.
Because I feel like he's trying to say it'd be funny if it was
the code was ABA, right?
It's very. You know what? That's a great call. I love where your head's at. That you're reading the underlying pattern. It's very funny that without hints, these are actually difficult questions. I guess Pete really gets it. Question number 2. Who has posted new stuff on their website today? It's been 25 years since we've seen something new, hasn't it? This is a very pointed question, I guess. A, Bill Watterson. B, Gary Larson. Or C, Cuba Gooding Jr.
I guess I'll go with B.
So that's... let me give you a hint. It's sort of not B.
Oh, A? All right.
It's A. I believe it's A based on my observation of the internet. I think Bill Watterson posted some stuff because it was a Calvin and Hobbes reunion.
Oh, okay.
Alex, how's my fact check coming on questions 1 and 2?
I got to be honest. I was actually looking up the Robin Williams movie that he was hinting at, and Kevin got it right. It's What Dreams May Come. Just to spoil that
Alex,
little thing.
That's the wrong energy, Alex. You're not following the right trivia energy.
You
haven't looked up the answer to question number 1? Wow. That's true. Everybody drink. Question number 3. Steve Orlando and artist David Tinto are creating a creator-owned image comic series called A, Commander in Crisis, B, Crisis Commander, or C, Werner Herzog. And again, I don't know the answer to this, so I am going to quickly look it up. But why don't you answer, and I'll tell you if you got it right, like most trivia works.
Maybe A.
And it's hard because the answers are very similar. But you are correct. It is Commander in Crisis. Nice job. I fact-checked myself. Congratulations. You just won trivia, I assume, because our fact checker Alex is bad at his job. Everybody drink throughout this whole thing.
Sorry about that, everybody. Go ahead, Justin.
Is Justin frozen?
I was gonna say, yeah, shoot us your information, and we'll get you a $25 gift card. Thank you for understanding topical comic news, and a special shout out to Pete for giving us the questions without answers.
Thank you so much. This is awesome.
Thank you for coming on. All right, man, I love this show. I love the fact that I'm cracked out for moving. Justin is on some sort of delay, and Pete isn't here. So this is working out really well. I think we should probably wrap up the show before we go any further. What are you looking forward to tomorrow, including DC's stuff, of course, which is already out, but New Comic Book Day technically is tomorrow. What's going on? What are you looking forward to, Justin?
I'm looking forward to Adventureland #2. Adventure Man #2, excuse me, which is Adventure Man, yes. Super excited for that book. The first issue was super I didn't expect what was coming as it went on, and it really landed well, and I'm excited to see what happens next.
Yeah, we'll have a review of that on our Stack podcast, which comes out Wednesday at 9 a.m. in the Comic Book Club feed and in the Stack feed. Another one we're going to have a review of, I was waffling between this a little bit, but we're going to be talking about Excellence #8 from Image Comics. I know we've talked about every issue of this, but to spoil what I'm probably going to say on the Stack podcast, this is the book of the moment, is what I feel like. It is so good, and what it does with this issue raises the real world stakes so much. Man, I can't wait for you all to read it. I'm very excited.
Yes.
All right, that is it. Couple of things to plug before we go, and I'm going to start up the sound cue here. Okay, so first of all, thank you to our two amazing guests on the show, Neil Kleid. Don't forget to check out Savor, that comes out next year, so you have plenty of time. Also, Tze Chun from TKO Studios. You can check out all of their stuff absolutely free right now, so please go do that. Next week, we're going to have another great show for you. Jim Zub is going to be here talking about all things Dungeons and Dragons and other things. Also, Nat Townsend is going to be here, and we're going to test the tech in advance, see if it works. We're going to find out how many...
Nat Townsend.
Yes, we're going to find out how many catching gloves that he has in a bucket and all of those good things. Also, a couple of things to plug. Star Guys, our Stargirl podcast, is currently running twice a week, Mondays and Tuesday nights, so definitely check that out. Also, Let's Hear It for the Boys, our boy podcast, is currently running. That's available everywhere. And Umbrella Podcademy, our Umbrella Academy podcast, has just kicked off. That's going to go every Thursday, so check that out as well. Patreon.com/Comic Book Club, iTunes, Android, Spotify, Stitcher, or the app of your choice to subscribe and listen to the show. ComicBookClubLive.com, at Comic Book Live on Twitter. Please follow us and check us out. We appreciate that. And folks, we'll see you next time. Maybe we'll all be there.
Yeah.
All right. That's it. Thanks, everybody.